Full room today and a lot on the agenda. So let's get started. Roll call. We are missing Francie Charin and Brent Campbell. Did everyone get a chance to look at the minutes? Yes. Any comments, changes, updates? And if not, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. If you had a chance to look at the agenda, any changes or questions of order or process, anything? Dana, thank you for working so hard on this agenda. There's lots of links in there. If you are a member of the public and you'd like to find this information, you can go to the Downtown Commission's. Yeah, we may. Is it not loud enough?
Well, we can try turning this off, but
It's hard for me to tell up here. Yeah, it's as loud as it goes. So I'll speak up. Is that better? Okay, I'll just get really close to the mic. So this information is online if you would like to look it up on your phone. It's at the Downtown Commission's City of Asheville page, and all the links and documents that we're going to project on this screen are available there. So first up, we have an update from the Asheville Downtown Association. Are we putting it up on the screen somehow? Our last big event was the July 4th celebration, and I put an image of this. Okay. I'll just give you a brief update without the pictures. Let me get back to it. Yes, you have it. So we had a very successful July 4th. In partnership with the city, the Asheville Downtown Association throws this event every year. And I had put up an image for everyone to see kind of the breadth of this environment that they create and then manage for. It takes about 24 hours to put together, celebrate, and take down. So kudos to the many volunteers and the city of Asheville for the partnership on that event. I think in the years that I've gone, I believe it is the most diverse crowd that comes to downtown Asheville. If you've gone, you may realize that too. So our next event, the next Downtown After 5, is on July 19th down on North Lexington Avenue. It is going to be with Shamar Allen, who apparently is a longtime trumpet player for Galactic and has worked with a myriad of famous artists, and should be great. We're still doing the Hoop Jam every Tuesday until August 6th, so we've got a few more, and it's 5:30 to 7:30. You bring your own hula hoop. The Leaf Community Arts is still happening every Wednesday, which is 6 to 7:30 p.m., and that will go through July 24th. And lastly, of course, if you haven't visited the Drum Circle in a while, every Friday night is the Drum Circle, hosted by the ADA. And that is it for those particular updates. How about you, Stephen Lee, an update for design review?
Yes, we had our meeting last month on the 18th, and there was one project up for design review. I think it was the second review that we've had of it. It was a 172 Ashland and 185 Cox Avenue project. The meeting notes are very detailed. They're available online, but I'm going to kind of hit the high spots just so the commission's aware of, the public's aware of some of the key design elements that are being discussed at this point. It's a very, very large project, so there are a lot of pieces that we tried to kind of dive into at a deeper level at this second meeting, specifically a lot of discussion about building materials and how they conform to not just the ordinance and the downtown master plan, but suggestions that the design professionals on the committee could recommend. I think that one of the biggest conversations that's continuing is just linkages between this really large project. And I think that, again, one of the key factors that was pointed out that's really favorable is the fact that these are broken apart buildings. It's not one large, massive building. They're big buildings, but they're broken apart. But connectivity between the main streets was something that was discussed at length, as well as I said, building materials. Just some concerns that were raised by the committee members about not having this look too residential, breaking up the palette, responding to how the building relates to the street, the building heights, and then a couple of the buildings that have some extremely large masses. There's an interesting engagement that the building has on Ashland, and that was discussed at length. There was also a discussion regarding just the overall sustainability of the project and just trying to help brainstorm with the developer about opportunities. And it was mentioned that stormwater runoff is definitely something that they're looking to address in their hardscape features within the public right-of-way and then inside of the project as well. We encourage strongly, and there was a lengthy discussion regarding green roofs and the pros and cons of that, and the architect had their opinions on that. There's a second project that is coinciding with this by the same developer, and that was brought to the committee for the first time. It's at a different parcel, but it relates in that it's a affordable housing project, much closer to the central business district, but has its own challenges. And we reviewed some very schematic first-round sketches of that structure, and it's strictly residential, as opposed to the first one I mentioned, which is mixed use. And then our last discussion that we're going to discuss later on is just membership of the committee and the terms.
I just had one other comment. Another concern on the Ashland Cox was one of the buildings, they're showing residential on the ground floor, and we would like that to be more activated with a retail or some other kind of public activation.
That was Cox Avenue?
The Cox
Okay.
Ashland.
Thank you. Thank you for that lengthy update and great notes. So we're circling back to the membership of the committee later on, is that right? Or did you want to tackle it now?
I think it's
It's down on the agenda.
later on the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Let's get back. Okay. Next up, we have an update from Jessica Bernstein and Andrew Mayrone related to 360 Hilliard, a project we've already reviewed.
This is just an update since the Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission and the Technical Review Committee have already reviewed and approved this project. It was a Level 2 review at 360 Hilliard Avenue, Aston Park. You all remember that. And it was approved to be 3 stories, 64 residential units. There were a number of design-related variances that this body recommended support of and then were ultimately approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And just to refresh your memory, that had to do with the amount of fenestration at the ground level. Since it was an entirely residential building, they wanted a reduced amount of fenestration. And then the design review component was unanimously supported by this group. The applicant has proposed to increase the density on that building. They are proposing to go from that 64 units up to 86 residential units, and so that results in an additional floor. So it's 4 stories now instead of 3. That's basically just inserting a floor into the middle of the building. It doesn't alter the roof line. It doesn't alter anything on the ground level. The materials are all the same. It's really just a kind of a repetition of what was the second floor. So now that's a second and third floor, within the 4th being the top. So it doesn't trigger any additional city review. It didn't trigger going back to the Technical Review Committee. None of those variances that were approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission required re-review or were affected. Nothing about this additional level altered or affected any of the design, the compliance with the design guidelines. So there's really no need to re-review or re-vote. So this is simply just an update to let everyone know that that is a change to this project. And so we provided in the materials both the original elevations as well as that update for you all to see.
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Is this update new, like post-council vote to this?
This was not a project that was subject to city council review due to the number of units or due to the size of the project. So it was just a level 2 project.
And my question is, I think I remember, I could be mixing projects. The parking was on the interior.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time when we discussed it, I remember it being at a certain percentage of the actual occupancy, and that was allowed or permitted. With the additional floor, are they still meeting that percentage in the parking?
Great question. Parking is not required by the UDO for the downtown projects. The only use where parking is required downtown would be lodging. So while they are providing that surface parking, it's not a technical requirement of the city. So there's.
But it does diminish the actual amount potentially that was, like in terms of the ratio. So I remember you talking about a ratio that they were.
There's not.
interested in.
There's no increase to the amount of parking that's provided.
Jessica, are the neighboring property owners advised about this change?
There's no technical requirement to go back through any kind of review, so there's not anything like that.
How interesting. Okay. I noticed the improvements to the Bacote Greenway and the stormwater infrastructure. Was that part of the original deal?
That is something that is going on as a part of the project.
Was it always, or is that? I don't remember hearing about that. I think it's terrific.
We talked a bit about it. Well, actually, we talked a lot about how they were designing the project to reserve space for that to happen.
Right.
So that's not a part of this proposal.
Well, they're funding some of the improvements, right? Yeah. So now they're actually engaging in spending $200,000 on infrastructure to support the entrance to that greenway, according to the notes, right? Last paragraph, I believe. Which I thought was great. So value of public improvements is $225,000. And that's good. So this project has been back and forth a little bit in different policies. We're pretty confident this one will move forward.
As far as the zoning review, we are absolutely hoping for that to happen.
Great.
My last question is, even though parking's not required and they're allowing for it, with an increase in number of units, there could be more differently abled people. So will there be more handicap accessible parking spots just for the shift in number, so that for people who actually aren't mobile by walking, they have more opportunity to park their vehicles?
When this project, so all downtown projects, after they're reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, it goes back to TRC, the Technical Review Committee, for a final pass through. And I think that would be when our building safety folks do that sort of, evaluation to ensure that the correct and required amount of accessible spaces are provided based on the number of units that would be required to meet that accessibility law. So it will be, that's part of their review for sure.
Yeah.
I know, but oftentimes there's not enough parking even with that, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is purely an update. You don't need any
Correct.
motion or
There's no
movement from
vote
us.
that's required. It's just to share that new information.
Any other comments or questions for Jessica? Thank you for that update. It's an exciting project. Okay.
I can give a brief update. We're looking to close on our end in early September. We'll close simultaneously with the bank on the property. We've got to draft our.
Speak up.
Sorry. We've got to draft our. Yes, Andrew Mayron from Community Development. So we're working out the last, I guess, round of logistics. We obviously got to go through final TRC. We're looking to close our loan and our land use and syndicate agreement and all the batch of legal documents, and hopefully close early September, begin work. As you mentioned, they're going to build the trailhead and the greenway that runs adjacent to the property. You know, there's some minor things we've got to work through with that in terms of easements, deeding back to the city, that type of stuff. But we're not going to let this one off the hook, and we're going to start in September and hopefully get our CO in 2021 and get those affordable units filled.
That's great. And just in case y'all don't remember, this was a city-owned parcel that we were moving into housing strategically. So it's great to see it moving forward. Thank you, Andrew.
No, you're welcome.
Okay, next up, we are on to new business. We're going to do a downtown design review for Create 72 Broadway. I want to introduce the process for everyone in the room. There are going to be two things happening around this particular review. Can you hear me? Okay. So first, we're going to do an official design review where this body hears about just the design of the building. We're not going to talk about what kind of use happens in the building, just the design. Does it meet our design guidelines? Does it meet the actual design requirements? And we will hear from staff as an introduction, then we'll hear from the developer for a few minutes, then the commission will ask questions, have comments, then we will open it up to public comment about the design, and then we will vote. Once that process is done, we will move on to a second agenda item that talks more about other impacts from this project unrelated to the design. So we will open it up again. We'll hear from the developer about some of the social impacts and other community driving impacts from this particular project. And then we'll do the same process again. We'll hear from the developer, we'll talk amongst ourselves, we'll open up for public comment, and then if needed, we will possibly make a recommendation. Does everybody get that? So if you want to speak about this project, the first thing will be just about design. All right, thank you, Jessica.
Thanks. The project site, I think we're going to just, if there's anything that I can show a little more clearly, we're trying to change to all electronic, and it's. I think it's a little easier to go with paper, but that's not the look of the future. So let me know if it's helpful for me to kind of flip around between pages. But the project site consists of 3 parcels. It's at 61 and 67 North Market Street and 72 Broadway Street. So the combined area of these 3 parcels is about a half an acre. And so, as I noted, there's frontage on both North Market Street as well as Broadway. On the North Market Street parcels, there's currently 2 small buildings. I've consulted with Stacy Merton from the HRC. They both are contributing resources in the National Register District, as most buildings downtown are, but they're not individually noted as being historically significant. They're constructed around the 30s and 40s. They're both under 5,000 square feet, so that falls under the threshold that this commission uses for evaluating demolition as a major work. But they would be demolished as a part of this project. The Broadway parcel is surface parking currently. It's right next to the Masonic Temple. There's also a portion of the site that spans over an existing alleyway. So there's a small alley closure that will accompany this project. This project, due to the size, will go to City Council. It requires to go through that conditional zoning to Central Business Expansion District. And then with that small bit of the proposed closure of the alley, that's a separate but parallel process that City Council will comment on and would ultimately approve. So the proposal is to construct a new mixed-use building on the site. The mix of uses has 150 lodging rooms, 30 residential units, and a mix of office and retail spaces at the ground level on both frontages. You can see the building is shown 9 levels, a height of 74 feet. The proposal also includes roof decks at different levels. I mentioned parking is not required when we were talking about the last project unless there's the lodging use. So parking is provided with this project. It's structured within the building. There's 1 vehicular access to the site, and that is from North Market Street. The guest drop-off is required for lodging uses to be internal to the site, and that is incorporated within this development, within that parking structure in the building. Central Business District expansion requires 12-foot sidewalks, and that's shown on both frontages. The proposal also includes a pedestrian access to span across the site from Broadway to North Market. So that's also shown. That would be publicly accessible to provide that street-to-street connectivity. The only landscaping that's required is street trees, and that is provided. As far as the design and operational standards that are in the UDO, we know there's a good amount of requirements for new construction with fenestration and the street wall step backs and other standards that are required to try to minimize the bulk of a building and provide activation on all the street-facing frontages, and all of those are compliant. There's no special conditions to not comply with any of those design and operational standards. With the design guidelines, I noted in the staff report, the project is aligned with a great number of the design guidelines. It really does activate both of those street frontages. There's minimized vehicular access points. There's variations in the facade, and the mass is really broken up, so it seeks to kind of diminish the size of the building or the bulk of the building. Screening of mechanicals has been integrated into this early design phase to minimize that. The material changes between the base and the upper stories, also incorporating the base materials reflecting some of the brick that's in that vicinity. There's a number of other design guidelines. I've listed them out. I'm happy to talk about them if you've got questions or wanted to talk about any of them in more detail. I know that the architect for the project would like to talk more about the design as well. Staff does recommend approval of this project. It's aligned with all of the requirements in that central business district expansion district, as well as the design guidelines. So we are recommending approval of the design. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, I've got a question. So the alley, is that a public alley or a private alley?
It's a public alley, and it would be helpful if I can figure out. Well, are you talking about the alley that would be closed or the walkway that they're proposing?
No, the alley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only reason I ask is because currently that
It's a separate PDF.
It kind of shows right here, this notch out. We have
okay.
really not technological.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just
That little notch out. Thank you. So that's the extent of the end of the alley where, when you're right there and there's the stairs that go up.
Right.
It's kind of that little dead end
right. Okay.
piece.
So my other question is, do you have any idea how this is going to affect our tailgate market on Saturdays?
It certainly would. I think that's a big part of the conversation, and this is now that this project is going through the review part, we can have those conversations. I think we would like to see if the existing footprint of the tailgate market would be able to be altered and remain in place, if it would need to be in an alternate location for a temporary amount of time, if it would need to permanently move. I think it's certainly something that the city's well aware of and is beginning the conversations about right now.
Okay. Yeah, I looked at it last weekend, and it looks to me like it could be accommodated.
Mm-hmm.
If they just move a few of the stalls down, I think it could work.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, but in terms of making sure there's complete safety for everyone involved, we'll have to really evaluate that carefully.
Yeah, which goes to like loading and deliveries because there's a hotel component, so it's not just static residents driving or walking in and out.
Right.
So where's the accommodation for the flow of deliveries? Do we know that yet? And what are the impacts of that on general street traffic or alley or, I mean, all that impacts the building.
Sure.
So I'm asking not about environment or use, but I'm asking because of it totally speaks to the impact of the design.
Yeah, definitely. We don't, we have this coming up with all the projects that come downtown is how do we provide for adequate loading spaces? This project is not proposing to create a loading space. The requirement for the guest drop-off is accommodated internally, but we know that there's people moving in and out of the residential units, and there's deliveries to the retail and office spaces as well as the hotel component. So that will operate the way that it's operating all over downtown, at this point.
There's no requirement for set loading.
There's no requirement, and there's also a prohibition on creating that.
So they could just like stop in the middle of the street or block something. And
Well, they do
would
that
just-
now.
I know that's what I'm saying. It's the same as right now. Oh, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's not
more traffic, more people, but like stopping in the middle of the street creates future hazards.
As far as the design review part, we don't have any standard that speaks to that.
Is this something the developer might like to speak to as well? I know we've heard from you, and
Yeah.
maybe we can hear from them as well and then have a greater discussion.
Well, I was glad to see that the main entrance is not on Broadway, that Market Street is a much better location for that.
I have a quick question about the
Not
eaves,
the-
which I think.
Okay,
Not
let's,
relevant, not the drop-off,
let's
the
hear
drop-off.
from the developer, and then we'll have our discussion time. Thank
Sure.
you. Any other questions specific to Jessica's information? Okay, let's give the developer a chance to speak. Come on up, Peter.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Alvarez. I'm the director of MHA Works Architects in Asheville, and our firm is the architect for the Create 72 Broadway mixed-use project. This is a fairly large project, and the challenge, of course, is to take a large project that has a lot of programmatic elements that make it a true mixed-use project and have it fit within the scale, both geometrically and materiality, of downtown Asheville. And what I'd like to do is walk through the logic of the design and the architectural and planning features of the project and stay specific to the design review aspects of your review. So let me start with the site plan, since there were some questions that came up, and I'll try to walk through and maybe answer some of the questions that you may be thinking about in regards to access and deliveries and trash pickup and things like that. So we'll start with the site plan first. Again, this is the site plan for the project. Broadway is along here. Market Street is here. And that, of course, the alley is here. This is the portion that we're proposing to close. And we're closing this because all of the property owners that abut this rectangular piece are part of the development. It's a group of 3 property owners that have pooled their property together as part of the development package. So where the alley running down behind Mellow Mushroom, of course, is right through here, and this will be where all the trash pickup will be. So there'll be on the basement parking level at grade, there'll be a trash room right here where we can store trash for pickup. So there won't be any bags of trash out on the street or anything like that. One of the requirements that the city had in terms of vehicular access into a site downtown was to have only one curb cut. And right now, there are multiple curb cuts on both Market and Broadway, and that's created a fairly dangerous situation for pedestrians. And in order to improve the pedestrian experience on both of those streets, we've limited the vehicular access to only one part, and that will be right here. And there'll be access, egress, and ingress traffic for both the hotel and the residential part off Market Street. And because it's in the north corner of the property, we're minimizing the impact on the farmers market. And as Dane had mentioned, possibly we could move some of the stalls further south to accommodate everyone and still have it safe for people going to the market and be able to have access in and out of the building. So we obviously want to work with the farmers market. It's a main feature for downtown. It's an amenity for guests and residents. So we're well aware of the issue, and we'll work towards a good solution for everyone. By taking the curb cuts out of the Broadway side of the building, we've made this, which is now I believe there are 2, possibly 3 curb cuts along here. We're eliminating that, and that opens up the opportunity to have pedestrian entrance into the building here and a retail space here. And I'll show that in 3 dimensions in a minute. On the as far as pedestrian entrances, guests coming to the lodging part will come in through here. Residents for the condominium part will come in here. And of course, the vehicular traffic will be here. So we're trying to spread the access to the building and keep the pedestrians away from the vehicles as much as we possibly can in a downtown environment. You'll have to bear with me because I'm not sure how this laptop works.
It's touchscreen as well. Yeah, just treat it like an iPad.
You can scroll up and down with the button. Yeah.
this image, and by the way, we have images, the same images are on the easel. So those of you over on this side of the room who can't see the screen, we have the same images here as well. So hope that's helpful. This slide shows the this image shows the different programmatic aspects of the project. And keep in mind that it's a true mixed-use building. There are a lot of parts that have to work in coordination with one another, particularly life safety, exiting, and parking. So in this particular drawing, we're showing the parts that are, well, for example, and you have this so you can read along, but some of the high points of it. We have this portion, this L-shaped portion of the project is the lodging piece. Along the street level, we're planning on putting in some type of retail space, and we hope to have an art gallery there because there's an effort underway now for a Broadway arts corridor district that is being finalized this month, and we want our project to be supportive of that, and we feel, and of course we can't commit yet because we don't have a tenant, but we'd like to have an art gallery space in here and have it open into the lobby of the hotel portion of the building, so when guests or either the public or guests in the hotel come in, they're actually stepping into an art gallery space rather than just a hotel lobby. And that speaks to the developer's goal of having the entire project be art-centric based, that there's going to be an emphasis not just in placing artwork randomly around the building, but having art be an integrated part of the architecture of the project. And as we develop the design in more detail, we can be more specific about that. But what we want to have art-centric art gallery space along here on the Broadway side. This portion right in here, which will not be seen because it's beside some existing buildings, this is where the parking garage will be. And that element right there is the alley level trash entry pickup. And then there is a single level of parking below grade that spans under the entire complex, and then 2 levels above that that are bookended by the residential part of the building and the lodging part of the building. So from the street, you won't see any or be aware of any parking at all other than the entry into the parking garage, which is on the Market Street side over here. Now, the main features of the project, this part here is the lodging part. This part here around the corner is the residential part. And you can see it's essentially a U-shaped plan with this open courtyard in the middle. And that is the top over the parking garage. And that will be a landscaped green space. So we'll have a green roof to help with stormwater runoff. Up on the lodging side of the building, there'll be hotel rooms along Broadway, and again along the side of the building on the north side that faces the Masonic Lodge. On top of all that will be the actual check-in lobby. So guests will enter in on the Broadway side, go up to the top floor, check in here, and this whole top floor will be a publicly accessible space that will have a small restaurant, an outdoor dining area, and check-in for the hotel guests. It'll be fairly similar to what the AC Hotel is doing right now, possibly a little bit smaller, but it'll be publicly accessible. On the north side of the building, and I'd like to speak a little bit about what we're planning on doing here. This is an idea that came up from the design committee, and we all think it was a great idea, and having gone through 3 meetings with Stephen Lee's and Pam's group to really refine the project, one of the ideas that came up early on was there's no pedestrian access from Market Street to Broadway other than going to the extreme northern or southern end of that whole block. So what we agreed to do was to step the building back, give up some square footage, developable square footage, and give it to the community as a public amenity by providing this walkway from Market Street to Broadway. Now what that does is it opens up an opportunity to have an integrated arts component in the project. And what we're planning on doing, this is still being developed and we haven't finalized it yet, but we're very excited about the potential of having a series of vignettes along the walkway that are display cases that would have locally sourced craft on a rotating exhibit basis. So when you walk through here, you have some interesting elements to see. Behind all that will be a screen for the north side of the parking garage. It has to be ventilated, but we'll cover that so you can't really see it. As the building, we reach the end at the corner here, the owner is in the process of discussing proposals from mural artists to develop potentially a three-dimensional art piece that will be on this portion of the building, which is the blank wall of the elevator shaft. So we want to put something there other than just a blank wall. And then, again, around the corner, that leads you to Broadway and of course, back to the entry to the hotel and the art gallery space. In addition to the lodging part, there are 30 residential units, 6 of which are affordable housing that we are packaging as for creatives. Federal law allows us to take applications from people who meet the 60% average median income, and we qualify them as creatives. So we're trying to have a space, 6 units within the building for creatives to have a place to live, and Jackie will talk a little bit about the details of that, but later, because it's not specific to design, but it is an overall component of the project that we're very excited about to have included. So that's generally the overall design of the project. The next part I'd like to talk about are the materials. While I'm talking about that, I'm going to pass around a tray that has all our material selection. So if you'll bear with me for a second. Start with that. Just pass the pieces individually. Again, the mixed-use project is fairly large. It's at 160,000+ square feet. So the challenge is to have it not be monolithic at all. And what we've done is we've spent a lot of time looking at a material palette that breaks the project up into would appear to be multiple buildings at the scale of the existing environment. So what we're showing, and this speaks to the guidelines, everything along the base of the building, all the way around on all 4 sides, up to the top of the parking garage level, which is the top of the 2nd floor. That will all be some type of masonry product, whether it's brick or a polished stone of some kind or polished concrete block. And they're in the sample tray. Above that, in certain locations in the building, particularly this part of the Broadway side and the back side where the residential component is, that wall and that wall, there'll be metal panels. And that is, we have a sample, this a dark charcoal gray metal panel and a sort of a light gray. And we're looking at mixing those in its strategic areas around the building, but specifically in that location and that location. All of the windows will be clear. The framing for the windows will be predominantly dark bronze anodized to contrast with the exterior material. We may use a combination of both dark bronze and clear anodized in walls that have darker masonry, so we can create a little bit of a contrast with that. Above and beyond those specific locations, the rest of the building will have EFIS system, which is exterior finish insulation system. And what we're proposing is, and I know what you're all thinking, that's the same product that was used on the Aris. What we found is that the city is not requiring, and we're very pleased that they're doing that, is that when that material is being sanded, it has to have a sander with a vacuum attachment to it. So there may be a time when a little bit of the styrofoam will fall down to the ground, but the idea is that it will be vacuumed as it's being shaped. And we're going to be very specific in how we write our specifications to make sure that that's done. But what we're proposing is to have a finish system for the stucco that's not just a flat beige color that you see all around. We're looking at, and Pam has the samples right now, colors that are more specular, a darker and a lighter color, so that when you look at it, when the sun hits it, it's going to look more like granite, but not have the weight and the energy and efficiency of granite veneer. So those are all the materials that we're proposing to use for the project. The last one, there's a brick sample in there, and that will be used to wrap the end of the building on the residential side, on the Market Street side. And the brick we're proposing to use has a dark iron spot feature to it that we feel works well with the cooler gray colors. And the other masonry pieces, stages you have, those are the pieces that are going to be on the Broadway side, which predominantly that, and then accent with the other.
This is also Broadway, or this?
No, that's Market, and then the other is Broadway as well. So that the one in your left hand is accent, one in your right hand is the field.
Did you say the square footage was 106,000? 160,000.
Is the EFS material represented in this packet of samples?
The finish is, but the actual material we didn't bring because we didn't have the exact sample. But it's essentially, and what's, for better or for worse, the good thing about EFS is that it is a system that meets the energy code because it does not allow heat migration from the outside of the building to the inside of the building. There's no metal attachment that allows heat transmission. And it's on one hand, it's an economical system in and of itself. On the other hand, it helps make the building more energy efficient. But it's essentially a layered system with gypsum sheathing on metal studs. There's an adhesive layer that holds the foam in place, which, and I've seen a demonstration of this, it's much stronger than if it were mechanically attached. And then the insulation goes on. That creates a continuous skin all around the building that keeps it weather tight. And then the finish, which is in 3 layers, is applied to that. So what we're, a little bit more about the finish, we have also, there was a smooth piece that went around, and we're going to use that in an accent area as well. So we're trying to, again, not have just a plain gray, beige, grayish color for the skin. We want to have it more specular and more interesting, but still have the energy efficiency of the EFS system as part of the project.
Peter, I believe it was you that informed us at a previous design review that there is a secondary EFS product that is extruded and of different quality, also more expensive, but perhaps doesn't blow away as much.
Right.
Is that being considered?
We will consider that. We can't make a commitment to that yet until we price it. What we're trying to do, the whole reason for the extruded was the issue of the debris that blows around. But now that there's systems available that allow for the expanded to be vacuumed while it's being shaped, I think let's assume we're going to use that.
And I think that's one thing I've just got concern over because I know that at the Eris Hotel there were so many issues with that, and they implemented a sanding routine with the vacuuming routine in the sanders, and it just even with everybody around the base of the building screaming, and it was a huge issue. And I think that the developer really needs to be aware that this is a big concern, and it's something we've been talking about at each review. And short of us finding a way to encapsulate these buildings as they're under construction, sanding unless it's a whole different system than what Eris has been trying to use in the final stages, I don't think it's the answer. So,
Yeah, I agree. That the vacuums were used also on the Cambria when there were still issues with snowflakes everywhere. And I know we had a discussion with city staff about possibly requiring screening the whole building, which I think is the way we're going to have to go if it continues to be an issue. If you're going to use EFS, then you screen the building and contain it on site. So I don't know where they are in that process.
Yeah,
if that
Dana or
makes sense.
Sasha, do you actually have an update on that at all about, so we heard from Ben Woody, we all gave input. Did that finalize?
I did speak with Ben yesterday about it. I don't have any actual updates on progress, but he's aware that, because it came up in the last design review committee meeting, and so I made sure and shared that. I'll follow up with him again, and maybe he can provide some updates on where they are.
Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't see that the vacuuming made any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, I was getting styrofoam in my food at Noodle Shop long after the mitigation effects were in place. So I'm concerned that mitigation is just, this mitigation and this material just are not enough to create the result that we're looking for.
Yeah, the mitigation didn't really work very well.
Well, especially for 160, it seems like just the care, and I definitely get that you've been very thoughtful and careful, your team has. I think on the EFS piece, and I want to talk about it, I have a couple other environmental questions. The level of care for such a large project seems like it would need to be raised even to a higher level, just because of all of the overshoot of everything to so many potential streets, businesses, residents, customers, so that care, I feel like, could come up another notch in terms of that particular material. And then the other thing I want to ask, I actually was going to ask about environmental. So I noticed on the back of some of your samples that they had like interesting descriptions. And so for me, I'm wondering, are there off gases, for like the metal plate is the one that caught my eye. Like, does it produce off gases? And I noticed in your project, you don't also have like any stormwater capture, like rain systems for the grass area, like the rooftop grassy area, or solar panels. So I didn't know if you had any like environmental efficiencies that you were looking at in the construction of the building.
Well, we are. The civil engineers, civil design concepts can speak to the stormwater runoff aspect, because that's a civil engineering issue.
Sure.
The issue with solar panels, I'm sure that's something we can consider. We have plenty of roof to put that on. We just can't commit to that right now.
Sure.
I mean, we'll take that certainly under advisement.
I'm just asking for
Sure.
you to consider because of the footprint. I think there's a huge opportunity to actually put some environmental consideration, whether it be through solar or some other catching systems that could really help.
I'm trying to recall the actual requirement. So currently it's a surface parking lot. It's paved, it's impervious, right? So the
Pretty much
requirement
all of
to
it is.
install a stormwater control system happens when there's a certain percentage of new impervious surface created. But since you're 100% impervious currently, you
Right.
probably have no requirement to do a stormwater system, right?
Well, we have to manage it somehow, because it can't just run out into the street. And there'll be, because we're not adding to it, it's certainly not working well right now
Okay.
as it is. So that's one of the reasons to have the green roof piece, is because it's amenity for the residents, and it helps with stormwater mitigation.
Okay.
So we're trying to have that do two things at once. To the best of my knowledge, the metal panels do not off-gas. They're inert when they come to the site. They're painted, they're pre-painted in a paint booth somewhere that has environmental regulations to it, and then they're just clipped on or screwed onto the substrate of the building once they're installed. And the question about constructability, means and methods of construction, that will all need to be discussed with general contractor. It's my understanding that the developer would like to, once we're at a point where the project's approved, we will start working with and interviewing large general contractors that have the capability to manage a project like this and have had the experience of working in downtown tight urban sites, so that there'll be many more issues that will come up in those discussions regarding safety around the site, deliveries of materials, where everything's staged, how it's, how all the parts are put together, how, if they're going to do just-in-time delivery of all the materials so they're not blocking a street for weeks on end. Things like that will have to be discussed.
My other question is, do you plan to do this in phases, or is it like all
They'll
at
be
once?
it'll be all one, because,
Okay.
again, it's a fully integrated building with all the exiting and the parking garage. They all work together, so it's not possible to do one part and have it be a legally occupiable building. So it's all at one time. Let me just talk a little bit about the, we don't, unless anyone has any specific questions about the floor plans, I'd like to skip and look at the, what the exterior views would look like based on our renderings.
I'm not sure when to insert this comment. I'll just say it now. I'm looking at some of those visuals you're about to pull up, and I really appreciate the way that the South Market facade presents alongside its neighboring buildings. The 2 stories of ground level brick, I find, create a little depth and create a little kind of respectful nod to what's been there in the history. I do not see that same thinking on the Broadway corridor, which does not incorporate that same red brick, traditional brick of its neighbors.
Okay.
And I would encourage y'all to look at that instead of bringing in just the silver gray palette, monochrome palette, that entire wall on Broadway, to maybe look at doing on Broadway what you did on South Market.
Okay.
And is that to incorporate across the street with their construction? Are you related to that
No,
project?
I'm actually on the board of Center for Craft, and we'll be well finished before this starts. So our project finishes in November. Or
I just didn't know if
October.
there was a correlation because of the arts component with why you're choosing more of the gray versus the brick that's on Broadway.
The palette that we've developed is a cool gray color palette that we personally like, and it's just something we'd like to. But we're certainly open to changing some of the materials. We just need to discuss it internally with the client. But this slide. Let me just show, this is a little bit for clarity. This shows the major components of the building, and then we'll get into the images. But for clarity, this is the light blue part is the lodging piece. The light green is the residential piece. This sort of gold color that wraps around and is included here. That's sort of the arts installation piece of the project that we're working to define. This shows where the parking is, and if you'll note that parking doesn't extend all the way out to either end of the building. It's bookended by the major elements. So just want to make sure everyone's clear about that, because we feel it's a very important aspect of the project. Then I have a piece of parking garage just stuck out there on a main pedestrian street.
And the parking is public for the hotel or private for the residents, or a combination?
It's both. We have parking for the 75 spaces are required for the hotel. There are 34 spaces or 35 spaces for the residents. And then there's an opportunity in there to do valet parking to stack cars end to end, because when guests come in and they go to the drop-off part entering into the hotel, their cars will be valet parked by staff. So we'll be able to, yes, we're providing 75 spaces, but they'll be able to stack many more in there as well.
But you don't have a loading zone, so they're valeting just in a parking space on South Market?
No, they drive in to
Oh, they
South
drive-
Market.
okay,
Yeah, they
internal.
drive
Great.
into all the way almost to the front of the building.
Smart, okay.
And then there'll be staff there right at the back part of the lobby on Broadway. Take the keys and park the car for the
Very smart.
for the
That's
guest.
great. That's a great
So-
solution.
I want to go through a series of images here to give you some context for the project. This is the north end of downtown. This is the Masonic Lodge here. This is 60 North Market Street here. Center for Craft is right here in Blue Ridge Public Radio. Our project is right in here. So our footprint is more or less about the same footprint of 60 North Market. 60 North Market's a little bit more elongated. Ours is a little bit more condensed. But that's That's where we're located right here. This image is actually from the top of the Rankin Avenue parking garage, and we want to show this because it gives you an idea of how the mixture of low-rise and taller buildings fit within the context of downtown. We feel that our project works very well because over the last 100 years, as buildings have developed downtown, there have been smaller 1-, 2-, 3-story buildings that all sprinkled along through here. And then over time, there have been taller buildings such as the courthouse, AC Hotel, Renaissance Hotel, 60 North Market, Masonic Lodge, which is a relatively tall building compared to other buildings in downtown. And then our project is right in here. And what's interesting, I think, to note is that it really reads as two buildings because this is the part that faces Market Street, and then there's a gap, and then this is the piece that faces Broadway. So the way this is sited and the way the geometry is set up, it really appears to be two buildings rather than just one monolithic building. So that gives you sort of an overall view of the project from a distance. And closer in, this is our project right here. Blue Ridge Public Radio, Center for Craft are right here. Masonic Lodge is here. Altamont Apartments, 60 North Market is here. So where our building is similar in height to 60 North Market, it's the tallest allowed building height to be considered non-high-rise per the North Carolina Building Code. And there are many reasons to do that, but the main one here from a design standpoint is it fits well within the context of some of the surrounding buildings that are in the neighborhood. By the way, this right through here, this is the pedestrian walkway. And if we didn't put that in, there's really no safe and easy way to get from Market Street over to Broadway other than to go up by Mellow Mushroom or back around here. So we feel that this is a good, nice benefit for the community to have that.
So the walkway's on the north side?
Yes. There's another view of the project in context with 60 North Market, and you can see that they're relatively the same height and scale.
Yeah, there's that perspective that I wish was the red brick.
Okay, so this is the side of the building that faces Broadway. And as you can see, because we've dropped this into an existing image, there's multiple curb cuts along here that we're removing.
Right.
This is the main entrance to the lobby here. The art gallery space will be here, and this will all be connected together as one space. Again, so it feels like you're walking into an art gallery when you get ready to check into the hotel. But
So there's a gain in on-street parking as well.
yes, yeah, we'll pick up at least 2, maybe 3 along here. So
That's great.
that's a good benefit for retail in that area. But regardless of the material on the low part of the building, what we've done is we've kept the cornice of our new building front before the step back to align with the existing brick buildings that are all along Broadway, all the way down to the end of the block, except where 52 Broadway is, where Momentum Gallery, that's a little slightly taller building. And this is the image that you see of our project if you're standing across the street from the Masonic Lodge and then walking down the street. You're in front of the Masonic Lodge here, and this is the element right here that will have the commissioned art piece. So it'll be a nice thing to see as a gateway into downtown.
Will it have any depth to it? That's
That-
that
I
same
think,
kind
yeah.
of flat wall, right?
Well,
So-
we've talked about that, and that's a good idea to have that. I don't think it'll be effective if it's just flat. It won't
Yeah.
read. So we're still looking at that, and of course can't make a commitment to what that's going to.
Could help
look
break
like-
up that monotony, though, yeah.
Yes. And on the Market Street side, we're using more of a traditional red brick that you saw in the sample. It has the iron spotting in it that is similar to a lot of the buildings on that street. But again, our step back allows for that brick element to be in scale with the adjoining buildings. And once you're back away from that vantage point, you can see how it fits in with the rest of the context of Market Street. That's 60 North Market, apartment building here and here, and then our project's right in this area here. So it's a nice framing of the Jackson building from that vantage point. And then looking north in the other direction, it works well. There's 60 North Market and our project and the apartment buildings here and here. So it's in the same scale as the surrounding buildings in that street. And I can take any questions now about the design of the project.
Thank you, Peter, for that thorough review.
My question is about stormwater. I don't know if you want to have civil designs come up, or Chris, are you?
Good morning, Chris Day with Civil Design Concepts.
So right now, we don't have any stormwater drains on Broadway at all, and it becomes a real problem, like yesterday, for example. We have no stormwater drains on Broadway, so how do you plan on dealing with the stormwater issue?
So the best thing about this project is the fact that with the green roof system, we will be a reduction in current runoff that does occur out there. So the goal of this project would be to overall reduce the amount of runoff that's occurring. That being said, we need to work with city staff to determine if we're directing the water back to infrastructure in Lexington or if there's some additional upgrades that are necessary to accommodate. But as we move the project forward, that's something that we're dealing with technical staff. So I don't have a specific answer for you, but to just say that it is something that we're required to convey at more detailed reviews with the appropriate staff of the city.
At least you're aware that it's a problem.
I appreciate you making
Is that
reference to
green roof actually some kind of like bioremediation system? Maybe it's going to collect and filter it too, or is it just a catch-all and absorption and move on?
Well, the idea of it is it catches the water and
Drinks
releases
it,
it
yeah.
slower. And
Yeah.
of course, the rainwater helps to grow the medium that's out there. So it does multiple things.
Yeah. I think there are ways you can stack a loft tried to do this, I think, or the garage apartments, where you can stack certain materials that also clean the water before it dumps into the road and into the river. Just a thought.
Is there a percentage of that roof that you know is going to be covered in the greenery? Or a percentage of is there a percentage of the site that is that you know is going to be?
I'm not sure yet, but it will be a majority of the top of the parking garage piece, which is, I don't know, maybe at least 25%, maybe 30% of the whole site area.
So it's a significant amount. It's not like a couple planters or something.
Yes, a couple of planters not going to do much of anything.
Okay.
I don't know if the final decision has been made, but I was wondering what the actual roof surface is going to be, because in the photos it shows up as like stark white.
It will be an off-white color. It's a thermoplastic membrane, and it's very stout, robust roof system that has a minimum of a 20-year warranty on it. So
I'm just wondering about the light reflection on buildings around it, because I know the Grove Arcade had a little issue with that, with light penetration in other buildings when the sun comes out really hard. So I'm wondering if there's another color other than white, if there's like a off beige or a gray or something where you're not going to get that penetration of light bouncing back into other buildings.
Yeah, there's I know that TPO is the name of the system, and it comes in multiple colors. So there's a gray color. One of the unfortunate or unfortunately, if anything that's white on a roof is not going to be white for long, because just dirt that accumulates. So it will dull down, but we'll certainly look at a gray TPO roof color.
Yeah. But the advantage of the white is you have maximum heat reflection.
That's right.
Which is also an issue right now.
Well, I think that's a positive, actually. The
Yeah.
light
I do
color,
too. Yeah.
the
I
white
thought so.
color is definitely a positive.
That's why it was developed as a white membrane to help with.
Yeah, the surface parking lot is like your maximum heat condensing. I mean, so it should be better overall.
Okay. Any other questions for developer or staff before we go to public comment?
You know, I know someone else mentioned this, I think it was Sage, but, you know, you've got some significant architectural buildings on Broadway. And to me, I would love to see the lower level wrapped in that red brick. I just think that those huge expanses of light beige and gray is really not going to fit in that well with the other buildings, the Center for Craft and the Masonic Temple. You've got other brick buildings close by, and I just think it's, for me personally, design-wise, it's a little too light.
Okay. We will certainly give that consideration.
It's worth discussing because
Yeah.
I think, you know, the community is sometimes feeling a little overwhelmed by lots of new development. So anything we can do in design to kind of respect what's been there. Like on South
Sure.
Market, you're demolishing 2 buildings, but you're essentially putting them back. And you can tell from looking at it, it's like, okay, well, we've densified, but we did it in a way that feels separate and on top of what's been our history. And I think if you can carry that through on Broadway, it'll be well received.
Okay.
I also want to just say I like the green roof piece. I don't know if you're going to be using sustainable permaculture systems or something like that that's going to draw pollinators or not. My thought process in that is if there's birds and pollinators and other things, then you potentially, with not having like solar or thinking through other environmental needs, you're creating another problem. So I just want also like your team to think about that, like that adding the green piece is great for stormwater, but it also could potentially draw pollinators. And then what with the white reflection and no way to capture sun? I feel like that's not quite integrated yet. So,
Okay.
thanks.
Well, and to add on to that, I know at the Renaissance, you know, they have the beehives on their roof, and I don't know if that's something you could integrate, talk with them, and have a space.
This is not design related, by the way. We're getting
That's
way
an
outside.
interesting
This is not design related. So these
Yeah.
are comments
No,
we
that's-
could bring
that's
up
an
in the other.
interesting idea,
Yeah. As a beekeeper, I support this idea.
Yeah.
However, design review.
Yeah.
Let's stay focused and let's have public
Well,
comment.
I
Any-
So I've got,
Okay.
oh, go ahead. Do you have?
Well, yeah, Sage had asked the question, I wasn't sure the answer. What's the percentage of setback that's required on that Market Street facade? Maybe Jessica, what's the
Because there were
percentage
there are
of-
essentially no variances from the UDO.
No variance.
It
Yeah,
does.
so it's only a certain percentage that has to step back?
There's various ways that it can be met.
Well, I'm just familiar with the above the second floor. There's a step back, so you can say that if there's actually a percentage that is only required to step back.
There's a number of ways that it can be complied with.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's no variances currently.
So the UDO in that section with the standards gives a number of ways for a design to comply so that there's a little bit of flexibility within the design. When we have smaller lots, there's a maximum percentage, and maybe that's what we're thinking of, where we say that you can't, you provide these step backs, but for smaller lots, you can't, you're not required to exceed, I think it was 10%. That wasn't applicable in this situation. The step backs are met by providing, it's a 10-foot wide step back, observed at least along at least 2/3 of the length of the street-facing facade.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I'd ever heard that. Okay. Thank you.
I had just one quick thing. Peter, I just wanted to mention the fact that in terms of process on this project, and just for everybody, especially in the room, to kind of realize this, but this is a project that has been presented to us where we really have no surprises. This has gone through extensive, I think you said it's been three reviews through the Downtown Commission Design Review Committee. So I think that I also just want to suggest that the quality of these aerial perspectives is really kind of the standard we need for projects, even smaller projects. So it has really helped us understand how this fits in. The artistic component in this, Peter, this is an unusual circumstance. You as the prime architect, prime consultant on this, you're an accomplished artist. And I know that you're passionate about this whole art component. This has been something that you've talked about since the very beginning. And I don't know if there's a developer representative in here besides you that's here, but I think it needs to be heard loud and clear that this artistic component along the art walk, along the elevator shaft, is really something we expect to see. And I know that with a project that is this complex, this is the type of thing that's very easy to just filter out. And we really need to see this, to see it as a part of I think the package that's being presented to us. My last comment is I think the green roof is just, to me, from what I can see in the documents, is just turning out not to be quite what I was anticipating to see. It looks very limited. It looks like the majority of it is actually a paver system. And I would just love to see that further developed, and I know it won't be through this body, but I think that, I know you know green roofs very, very well, and I was thinking this would be more of an intensive system rather than, I think there's probably going to be some synthetic turf up here for the dog walk area, which is not really a sustainable stormwater component. Neither are pavers, but that's just, I know that's part of budget, and if the developer is here, please hear that out too, that this green roof is a significant element that we're hearing that's going to be a part of this project. So that's all I've got.
Okay, well, let me speak to the art piece. The art piece is the developer's idea. Their family is very passionate about art. One of them is a musician, the other one's a painter, and it was their idea to bring this into the scope of the project. So we intend to carry that through. The green roof piece, Stephen Lee, you're right. We don't want it to be just planners, but we also, part of it needs to be an amenity space for the residents to be able to walk on. We haven't, again, developed it to a point, but if it's something that you all feel needs to be addressed a little bit more specifically, we don't have an exact number of square feet of this or that needs to be there. My preference would be to have it similar to the green roof on the garage apartments, because it's a great thing to look at and it's very successful. And the contractor who built that is here in Asheville, so it would be a good locally sourced subcontractor to do that.
Well, we're kind of assuming, since you did that project, that this is kind of what's happening.
Understood.
You've raised the bar.
Understood. I do want to pile on with your comment, Stephen Lee, about the quality of the in situ aerial renderings. Without telegraphing my other feelings about the project, I just want to say that is incredibly helpful for me to visualize and understand what's going on, and I would love to see more of this kind of stuff. I've seen slick packages before. This one's informative, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. We're very deliberate about how we did these, because the slick presentation it's usually at night with a lot of interior lighting, and it looks, oh wow, but you never really see what it is. Our design decisions are based on materials that will work in what's really here, not what somebody imagines it to be who's not in Asheville. We did all these, part of it was done in-house, and part of it was done by a local renderer, so.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other design-related questions before we move to public
Well,
comment?
there's a couple of things I like about this project. One, that you've actually tried to make it a multi-use project rather than strictly just a hotel. Also, the residential aspect I like, and the fact that you're aware of the Broadway Arts Gateway, which we're trying to develop down there. So there's some things that I really like about this project.
Thank you.
Time for public comment. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
So if you would like to speak about the design elements of this project, not the things that we were talking about, loading and things, we're going to get into other impacts and the use itself in a minute. But please introduce yourself. You have 3 minutes.
I'm David Nutter, a city planner and also a historic preservationist. I would like to commend the fine presentation that's been made of this project and also your admirable review of it. I would like to especially support the commissioner's comment not to use glaring white as a color on the facade. I believe in the case of the Grove Arcade, the architecture, fabulous architecture of the arcade was actually damaged by the positioning of glaring white on the facade of the adjacent hotel. So please support that comment and make it happen not to use glaring white. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, public comment is closed at 9:49. All right, commissioners. Does anyone feel ready to make a motion?
I do. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the design for Create Broadway with no conditions.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Didn't hear any. Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew, you are opposed. Please record that Andrew's opposed.
I am too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I see a show of hands? Who's opposed? Not mine. No. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3. Brian, Andrew, Ruth, all opposed. Great. That does pass. Thank you. We are now going to move into another portion of the discussion about this project. We actually created this agenda item based on what happened with the previous large project we reviewed, which was the Flatiron. So this is the second time we have tried this process. So I put it on the agenda so we would have the opportunity to discuss, does everyone feel like they have a discussion to be had at this time? Is it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so how about Andrew, if you do, why don't you get us started?
Well, there are some, my previous vote notwithstanding, there are some really positive things about this project that I would like to see. My chief concern is really with the the big topic that we have in the city about the mix of economic activity that we're getting in downtown, which is becoming extremely slanted in one direction, and there are seemingly no brakes. The brakes that we thought were on the process to try to understand what was happening with this with the tourism economy are clearly off the train, as we've seen in the past month. I feel that we are, of course, with every next project, we approach the edge of the bubble. And I know that we look at these things one at a time, but they don't exist one at a time. They exist collectively, and they affect us. They affect us collectively. And I'm very concerned that if we don't leave space for some other types of development, then we are going to see many empty spaces in the future. And I'm very concerned about the single economy that we seem to be building here.
You're speaking to lodging use, I assume.
Yes.
So I want to say there are a lot of elements that I think were well thought out about the project. I appreciate the collaboration between existing owners, the input from the Design Review Committee. I do believe that impacts in terms of traffic, noise. Also, I noticed the artist, I'm unsure, it sounds like it's a rental model, not an ownership model. And so once again, people in our community who may not fit a traditional economic model are left out of ownership. So that's my big beef. I do feel like some environmental considerations were highly left out, which is another big beef. So that's why you got a yay for me and not necessarily a no, because it fits a lot of the criteria, and yet there's still so many social and environmental impacts that just haven't been addressed.
I love the project. I think it has some really significant inclusions. I love the part with the residential, but I would really like to see more residential units and fewer hotel rooms. I know sometimes the numbers don't work. You have to, figure out how you can pay for the construction, but my biggest concern and why I voted against it was I just feel it's too large of a mass in that location.
I agree with Andrew. I think there's a lot of us that are fed up with the proliferation of hotels. However, I've seen the inevitability of what's going to happen, and so I'm happy to see at least that this one provides some residential, some retail, or commercial space. And yeah, it would be great if it had more residential, less hotel. But the reality is with what we have going on with the reviews we've had, it's going to be more hotels.
I find it somewhat astounding that it takes 150 hotel rooms to subsidize 6 affordable spaces. Is that how expensive artists are? The math there is astounding. If that's what we have to see for other projects in the future, that should be considered a warning shot.
We are going to have an opportunity for the development team to speak again as part of this so they can discuss. Toby, I know you need to leave. Thank you. That's okay. Stephen Lee, did you have anything? I thought you were about to speak. Okay. I thought a lot about this project, and I thought about as you said, the proliferation of lodging use in downtown and in Asheville in general, and whether or not we've hit a tipping point. And personally, I wish this project had come 3 months before the last one. Because when I look at what I believe council intended to do when they changed and created the lodging expansion district, my understanding is that it wasn't to ban hotels in general, it was to create better hotel projects. So we can't get away from our tourism roots at this point. Maybe that will change in the future. There's momentum building around building other economies. However, that's where we are right now. I do believe council needs to do and request of staff a saturation study to understand at what point is too much. However, when I step back and I look at all the individual projects we're reviewing, what's a good one? What's a hard one? What is this one displacing anything? Like, it killed me that the Flatiron displaced so many businesses. That was my number one problem with it. Then I look at this one, and I was like taking notes about all the things that it's doing. So this commission has been talking lots about ground floor activation, right? How do we get ground floor activation? If you think about the Hyatt in the Indigo, there's a little restaurant. It's really just a bland, nobody really enjoys walking by there or using those structures. This resolves that. I think the respectful nod to the materials on those ground floors is appropriate for that case, and why I spoke to the design of Broadway as well. Then there are other things that I think we'll hear from the developer that are happening. So I'm also on the Affordable Housing Board, and we struggle to get any housing in general, yet alone affordable housing. And we've recently lowered our threshold of requirement to target the 60 AMI, 60% of area median income, instead of what we've been doing, which is 80 to 100%. And this project is actually supplying affordable housing at 60% AMI, which I find fascinating, and part of why there's a fewer units. And I would encourage perhaps city staff, planning staff, whoever's looking at the Luigi program, to see if there are ways that we can help incentivize more affordable units or more residential units and make them help with their numbers, basically. There are other things that we've talked about in other projects that were about connectivity. How do you take a full block and break it up so people can move in between them freely? And I think it's incredible that you gave up 10 feet of buildable, developable space by right that you had to create a pedestrian alleyway that would create pedestrian flow. I think that's something we've talked about a lot. I struggle with the EFIS, and I hope that you consider using the better product. I know it's about price point, but I think it's worth looking at. Ruth, you spoke to, I think it was the mix of uses. This is another challenge we see in these large projects. It is extremely challenging to build, construct, finance, all of these things that are mixed use, and this one achieves it and does it in a very appropriate way, I would say. The artistic thing is another great component. I mean, respecting that the entire corridor is under review for an artistic, I don't know what we're calling it, the Broadway art project.
Broadway Arts
Gateway project, right. There's a huge neighborhood group and active group working on these things, and you blended right in. I think those things are important. There are other issues we faced, like loading on the street. It was a huge deal with Flatiron. We removed 6 street parking spaces that the public could use to create a private loading zone, and that went through. It's approved. So we lost 6 spaces and got a loading zone. You all have chosen to do loading inside. You've chosen to activate the ground floor in a way that the guests arrive and go up instead of a massive lobby on the ground floor. I think these are all things when we're talking about better hotel projects, design-wise, that are big improvements. If the goal was to get better hotel projects, this is a great example. I don't know if you're paying living wages. I don't know all those things, and I would like to hear from the developer on that. You also did the waste management removal. The other thing we talked about with Flatiron is where are the dumpsters? Where's the trash? What's the public going to see? And you got it off the street, so we're not even going to see it. I assumed that by removing trash there, you might even accept deliveries there too, which I think is great. Yeah, so I feel like if we're looking at hotels individually and kind of, it's hard to do this, but in a tunnel, like not looking at the overall hotel proliferation, that this is a great project. This is the one we should have said yes to. Flatiron is the one we should have said no to, in my personal opinion. But I would love to hear from y'all if you have other, I know you had asked for a little time to speak about some of the other impacts.
I just have one more comment before they do that.
We're not done discussing either. Yeah.
So I also want to say that I wanted to wait to say this. One of the things that I don't know if you're going to handle or not, I really respect what you've done so far, is when we continue, the turn cycle for hotel with mixed-use residential ownership and rental is like 2 years in downtown. I've been looking at it. And then what happens is it sells for a higher rate, rates go up year after year in a hotel, and so affordability actually becomes more unattainable because every 2 years we have a high increase in the change in mortgage rates, and this was bought at $250, now it's worth $550. So that component I'm very concerned about because right now at the table it appears to be affordable, and it is for rental, not ownership, which is a problem. But then in 2 years, it's going to be completely unattainable. So I want to dig into those roots and ask to solve those needs. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you could introduce yourself.
Yes. My name is Jacqueline Grant. I'm an attorney with Robertson Stevens here in town. For those who don't know me, I was born and raised here in Asheville. Other than going off to college and law school, I've lived here all of my life. Most of my family still lives here. And so I can tell you at the outset, I do not normally represent developers. This is the exception that I made because I felt like this project was different. Another hotel. And for me, that was huge because it implemented things that were important to me. Specifically, when I talk about why this project is different from other hotels, and the first part is the affordable housing. So we're talking about the 30 residential units, 20% of those being affordable. Let me say that is the minimum. We have applied for the Luigi grant. We would love, and the developer is willing to look at increasing that number of affordable rental units. And we're talking about a 60% AMI, and we're talking about for greater than 50 years. That's huge. Yes, yes. So this is different from other projects. When we talk about the affordable units, I also think it's important to note that we're talking about in downtown, we're talking about within, these residents will have their own parking within the building. And so when we're talking about smart use projects, this is exactly, as an Asheville native, what I'm looking for. Things that incorporate more than a hotel, things that incorporate the affordable unit, those spaces, and things that work for people who live in downtown Asheville. This project, as you've already heard, also incorporates commercial office space. One of the things that the developers looking at is whether we can make some of these units affordable commercial office space for small businesses. So that's another thing that we're looking for that I think sets this again apart from other hotel developments not just the economic advantage that we get with tourists and with the tax off of the development, but when we're talking about a tangible benefit to Asheville residents. And for me, that is huge and important when we're talking about developments going forward. There is no displacement of tenants. The landowners who want to sell, they want to sell, so there's no displacement of tenants. Again, this is huge. I know in other projects there's been displacement, there's been concern. And again, that's another reason why I'm willing to represent this developer when I've not represented others before. And when we talk about, as someone who has lived here all of my life, and I remember in the early 70s being small, coming downtown, you had Belk's, you had Jimmy's, you had all those department stores. It was busy, it was booming. I remember coming downtown in the early 70s, and it was busy. There were lots of hotels, there were lots of tourists, there was lots of activity. And then when the department stores moved out, Asheville opens up, and you've got a lot of less tourists, everything starts closing down. I remember in the 70s, the mid to late 70s, this is what downtown looked like. There were buildings that were boarded up, people would not come downtown, it wasn't really safe to come downtown. There was just absolutely nothing that was going on. And this is after we had enjoyed a period of a lot of tourists and economy and a bustling downtown. And so for me personally, I'm always looking for that balance. It's not, I don't like developments because we need those. The tourist is our economy. There does not appear to be any slowdown. I looked at the numbers from 2016, 17, 18. The occupancy rate of all the hotels downtown were over 80%. And we keep getting recognized in more magazines, and more people are coming. So the hotel, there is that need for the hotel, but what I like is how it supports our local residents. And so when we're talking about projects and we're talking about hotel projects, and I get it, I'm one of those that before I look at numbers are like, how many hotels do we need? The numbers do support it at this time. And if there's any project that deserves to go forward and be built, is one that actually supports local residents with affordable housing and with reasonable commercial office space for small businesses here and for galleries supporting our local artists. And so for me, this project is completely different from other projects, and in my opinion, should set the new standard going forward when we're looking at these mixed-use projects for downtown. Thank you for so much.
I think one of the things I left off on my list was the parking. My goodness, parking is incredibly expensive and challenging to build, and you park the entire building on site, which I find fascinating. I didn't hear anything about living wages today.
I did not. We have not, and actually, interestingly, I have just.
Sorry, it's a recorded microphone.
I have actually raised that issue with the developer, and so we're looking at that right now. And that's one of the things that I appreciate with the developer, because they've asked me, what do you think? And one of the things I've now raised is, I said, and I think we look at affordable livable wages. And so they're willing to look at that as well. So we're looking at that right now.
That's great. When I spoke to the order of these and having wished this had gone before, at some point we will hit a lodging room kind of saturation something. And I think when projects like this, they come in and do an infill solution, because this is just a surface parking lot, you are helping create the supply that might help protect some of our other historic structures from becoming hotels.
I think to remark on your point about displacement, which I felt very strongly about, it's sort of the word of the month
time. They won't ever be converted into a for sale product. And the idea is that if there's 6 units that become units that are for sale, they're going to appreciate in value, and that takes 6 units out of the market that less affluent artists can rent in downtown. So the idea is that if you're an artist starting out and you meet the requirements of the 60% AMI, and you live there for 3 or 4 years and you develop your artwork and you become successful, then you will want to move out, and that will open up a space for another artist or another creative coming along that would need that same opportunity. So the idea is that we wouldn't stop the flow of artists, creatives that can use that space. We're setting it up as a conduit, if you will, for more creative people to have a shot at a leg up in the arts market in our area. Because the worst thing, and I understand your point about affordable home ownership, but I'd hate to see 6 units that were affordable be sold, and then in a couple of years they're flipped and they become way more expensive. All those people coming along over the next generation or so would be denied the opportunity to have that space.
I agree with you, and I think if you maybe took it out of the condos, so there's the community land trust, the actual one from community land trust. I don't know if you've even considered talking to them about making one of the units affordable for ownership. I also think it suggests that there's livability that is for artists upward and mobile, and there's also a permanent unit or two that remain affordable as owners forever. I think that's interesting, and I think it's needed to create the community that stays and not everybody's just transient. And there's a difference between permission and ownership. And I say that a lot in my personal life, and it's not a review. I just want people to understand that permission is rental. Ownership is equity and decision for generational wealth.
Oh, sure. I mean, we've looked at that and we feel that there's more opportunity for more creative people coming along. So I understand. Thanks.
Any other comments from the commission before we go to public comment? Okay, public comment starting at 10:12.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am Dave Nutter, and I would like to comment on a missing ingredient in our way of dealing with hotel development projects. I do think it applies to this project. It certainly applies, I think, to our entire community and its method. I would like to encourage the Downtown Commission to begin thinking about economic supply and demand market analysis as a needed instrument for us to use in evaluating hotel proposals. I think Asheville, I've been trying to make this point for many years, actually, and I think we are not very good at using economic analysis in our process. I think we are, to a certain degree, and I love Asheville, a dreamer community, one which does not necessarily believe that economics is the hard and fast reality that others do. So I think we should be encouraging the city council, and I think we should all be thinking about adding this component. In other words, there are markets for lodging units somewhere out there. I believe there is a limit to our capacity to absorb more and more. So I would like us, to encourage the city, all of us, to begin doing an economic market analysis in general of the hotel market for the city of Asheville. Now, in reference to this particular project, I am very impressed and positive about it, and I know as a student of America that we live in a constitutional democracy in which the flow of rights cannot be stopped.
this flow of hotel projects will continue, and the city council will have to treat each one as a legitimate exercise in human rights. We can plan for the future, and I think we should undertake a consultant study by a respected consulting group to tell us about the innards of our economy. So I urge that. Thank you very much.
I'm Peter Landis up downtown. Something we don't hear often is 60% AMI. We hear 80% a lot, and there's really a disconnect between that and the living wage. The living wage, if my calculations are right, is $13.65. 80% of AMI is $16.92, which means people who are looking for one bedroom are already making less if they're making the living wage than what they can afford. 60% is $12.70, which is more in keeping with what the needs are. And without talking specifically about this project, the phrase 60% AMI just rang with me. And I'd like to encourage more of that so that more people who are actually in that economic group can afford to live here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colby Darden, and I'm a resident at 60 Market. So naturally, I'm a little concerned about what's going on with this project. And I have an architectural background. I have not practiced for many years, so I'm a little bit acquainted with how the system works, although not particularly here in Asheville. It's a very massive project. I think there's no way to move around it. I'm pleased at some of the questions that I'm hearing you guys ask, and I'm also thrilled that it's a mixed-use project, which I think is very needed. What I'm not so sure about is the need for 150 hotel rooms. That's 50% bigger than a loft hotel. The parking situation on that, while they are addressing certain things under roof, I'm not sure where the employees are going to park. And this is not a small issue in a town that has a problem with this. And then I don't know whether this is really in your purview or not, but I feel that the golden key here that is being lightly addressed is the vacating of the alley. Because the vacating of the alley allows this project to design in such a way that they can have a full parking garage inside. Without that notch, this building will collapse under its own weight. There's no way you can program all this stuff into the building without this piece that the city is giving to this project. So I just hope that the price that the city demands back for this closure of the alley is appropriate to what we're giving away. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is James Chapman, 60 North Market. And I think a group of us, of course, got the letter that we were having a meeting, and they were meeting on April the 11th at Sonic Lodge. So we went over there, and we got the letter, we looked at it, and we saw that they were going to build a hotel that had 150 units. It had 30 residential units. And they had 3,000 square feet, I think, for office, 2,000 for retail. We were trying to figure, where were these people going to park? Obviously, they have people that are going to work in this hotel, maybe by parking, or maybe they thought just as you can. It should have added up a lot more than 107. So that was one of our concerns. So a group of us went to the meeting to find out more, and got there. So we found out that parking is going to be on Market Street. It's going to be entrance and exit parking. Also, one of our owners in the 60 North Market asked the question, what hotel is it today? We talked to Hilton or Marriott or talked to any hotels. What hotel is this going to be? And they said they had basically gone with that. And so on April the 15th, we picked up this newspaper, and we read that they actually had a meeting with the media on the 10th of April. And it was going to be a Moxie hotel. Anyway, that was our concerns about it, and I still don't understand where all these people are gonna park. And if you have an answer for where they're gonna park, just let us know. But I can't figure it out. So, that is our main concern about it, the traffic on Market Street. And I think they could easily put the parking Broadway, people could have gotten out of there, turn right, turn left, go straight. Yes, it's more traffic, but it is at a place right now that's 4 lanes as opposed to Market Street. And that's our concern, and we should close it. It's going to be a nice thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Tom Herron, and you spell it Hearron. I'm a resident of downtown Asheville, and I've looked at the images we've seen for this project, and this is a beautiful looking building. It really is. It's well conceived and well designed. However, it's being proposed for the wrong place. I noticed that of all the graphics we saw, there were none from the across the street on Broadway to show how this will look in relation to the historic architecture of the Masonic Temple, not to mention the other historic buildings on that block. This is going to tower over the Masonic Temple. This will be like dropping the Great Pyramid down next to Taj Mahal. Both very nice buildings, but they do not belong together. Second issue is the parking. 150 hotel rooms, but only 75 parking spaces for the hotel residents. Unless they choose to levitate into downtown Asheville, they will need a place to park. The nearest parking ramp, unlike the Flatiron Building, is a quarter mile up a very steep hill to this hotel. I don't think many residents are going to want to do that, so they will be occupying street level parking. Finally, the third issue is the alleyway, which will be used for garbage and deliveries. If you haven't seen that alleyway, you should. It's an extremely narrow corridor. It is not a short driveway. It is a long drive from Walnut Street to the termination of that alley. It is too narrow for a delivery truck to turn around in. So they will all need to back in or back out for at least 200 yards, perhaps as much as a quarter mile. I hope the Commission will consider these factors in rendering your decision. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Kim Brody. I want to thank each of you for serving on this board in such a challenging time in our community as we're considering these uses. I wanted to focus on one specific thing, and that is the housing component of this. I think it really resonated with me what Ms. Hunter said about potential for the community land trust. When we look at what we're seeing as sort of a voluntary inclusionary zoning, it would have been awesome to have seen this over the past decade. But closer to 10% would be a more appropriate percentage. I'm very excited to hear about 60% AMI, but I would be even more enthused if it was ensured that it would be for voucher boards as well. Thank you.
I will add that the Luigi policy that they mentioned applying for requires that you accept vouchers. New updates since last year. Anyone else? Okay, public comment is closed at 10:26. Okay, so commissioners, what we did last time, we went through this process. Okay. I'm going to read through what I collected from that if you have like 1 minute, if you're curious. So last time we did this, we ended up making a recommendation to council that was carried forward in the staff notes as a separate item than the design review. So if we want to do that, I tried to collect everyone's thoughts, and this is a bullet list of what I've heard could be a potential recommendation. That there is a higher quality extruded ethos to reduce pollution, that they improve the ratio of lodging to housing and supply more housing units, that they work with the Luigi grant program to provide additional affordable units, and they work to create some units to be available for affordable home ownership, that they improve the green roof to meet the quality of design of the garage apartments. Steve Lee, I would encourage you to have more creative language there. that the Broadway ground floors be, use red brick similar to South Market to better incorporate into the existing block. That we encourage the workers of the project to be paid a living wage. That we encourage the developer to provide parking for staff. That we request, this is one we didn't talk about, one I have. I want these projects in general to inform the public of the new tax bases. When we take a surface lot and put a building on it, what's the benefit to the public? There is new property tax bases. And I would encourage council to recognize that in all their reviews. And to lastly,